Hello, everyone. Welcome to Michelle's Inspiration Hour. And I just hope that each episode brings you hope, motivation, and most of all, inspiration. Everybody has a story to tell. And I hope that you're telling your story to somebody else. Okay, before we get started, I always say a quote. And I read our next guest book. And this inspiration I saw in the book, and I thought, oh, this is perfect. Okay. And this quote is by Cindy Dale. And it says, a belief is a perception about reality. A feeling is a message from our body. Beliefs tell us what feelings we should feel, and our feelings tell us what to do with our beliefs. I absolutely love that. So, our next guest, Amanda Kate, is an author of The Divine, Messy, Human, Spiritual Guide to Prioritizing Internal Truth over External Influence. A recovering people pleaser, where have we heard that one before? And a self flagellator, she walks a path straddling the divine and messy each day. She is always growing, developing, and learning new ways of being, and hopefully one day leave the earth better than she found it. Amanda Kate helps people to regain their vitality, smashing through the internal glass ceiling and limitations to find new levels of health, vitality, and abundance. She also works with business owners to increase their vibration and attract greater wealth and prosperity. She lives in Melbourne, Australia, with her twin flame, her children, his children, and a dog named Zia. So I'm glad that she has a dog, just in case y'all hear a dog on the other side of the podcast. All right, let's bring Amanda on. Hi, Amanda.
Hi, how are you? I'm so happy to be here today.
Oh, well, thank you. I am so excited again. I think I've got so much to talk to you about. You are just a book of knowledge. And whenever I was reading your book, I kept taking notes and everything. And I thought, you know what? It would take like a whole week to talk to you about everything. But again, I think whatever people need to hear, I think it's going to come out of this podcast. We're going to create a wonderful episode together.
Oh, I'm so excited. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Well, first of all, I know, and hopefully I can pronounce it correctly. You're a kinesiologist. Did I say that?
Kinesiologist.
Oh,
Easy.
I know. That's one reason why I did not do it in the bio because I'm having a hard time saying it. But it says that you are a transformational kinesiologist. So what does that mean?
So, what I do, kinesiology, the way that we do it is a little bit different from in the States. We're energetic kinesiology. So, what we are looking at is the fact that the body knows the innate way to heal itself. What gets in the way is the messages, the thought processes, our ignoring of that internal wisdom, all of those modern life things. You know, we eat less vibrant foods than we used to that are more nutritionally void. And so we're not getting the right nutrients. We're not getting the right, spiritual nourishment, energetic nourishment. And so what I'm looking to do is really work with people to uncover what their body's trying to tell them. And so every dis-ease, lack of wellness, whether it be mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, is caused by stress, chemical,
Yes.
emotional, or physical stress. And then those stresses create an electrical discombobulation in your body. It means that the electrical signals aren't getting through properly. So I know for me, my nervous system was wired poorly through hypervigilance, where I was constantly on edge and constantly wound up like a spring because of the environment in which I was living. And then obviously what I was feeding myself, both, through television programming, through my food, through wine, through all of the things. And, there was no nourishment really coming from anywhere. And so my life changes really it started with the food and the lifestyle changes. And then it just grew and grew and grew. And what kinesiology did, it was like a doorway that opened, and it showed me this whole other world that existed where the mind, body, and spirit all need to be looked at for us to be truly healthy. And the reason I call myself a transformational kinesiologist is we often think that we want to work on something because that's what our conscious mind is telling us we want to work on. And yes, that may be one of the things we work on eventually. But often what will happen is our body is telling us things that we need to work on as a priority to be able to get those shifts that we need further down the road. And so I trust spirit, I trust my guidance, I trust the person's body wisdom in terms of the responses I'm getting through manual muscle testing, which is how we do the kinesiology. Online and in person is pretty much the same. Obviously, if we're in person, I muscle test on you, but when we're online, I tune into you and I muscle test on myself. So I muscle test your results on me. It pretty much works exactly the same. If anyone knows about energy, it's like tuning into a radio station, throwing an energetic blanket over somebody and then reading the results from there. But what we do is we look at working on the priorities that will create the greatest change, that will then allow whatever it is that you're working on to kind of start falling into place.
Wow. That is just so fascinating. And I'm glad that you brought it up, that you can actually do it, on the computer online, because a lot of people don't realize that. But I didn't realize that you could actually, after getting in tuned with somebody, taking your muscles and looking and evaluating it that way.
Yeah.
So thank you for bringing that up. The one thing that I do want to talk about is a lot of people with spirituality. And I know that everybody looks at spirituality differently. Now, how does spirituality, how do you integrate this into your business?
I don't think we can ever separate it out. And so I think a lot of people want to be able to silo it because spirituality has this, oftentimes in the mainstream, this bad rap of being woo-woo and out there. And, spiritual people are hippies from the 70s who are, long hair and caftans and dancing naked around fires with incense and stuff, They go into those extreme versions and, that may be part of our practices. I'm not one to judge. I don't really care.
Right.
I don't care how you practice it. For me, spirituality is really about having that mind, body, and spirit in alignment. I like to think of my body as this orchestra where every different part of me has a different instrument. And, if some are sharp and some are flat and some are just playing random notes, and I'm not going to have this amazing orchestral harmonic resonance that people are drawn to or want to listen to. It's just going to be noise. And that's what I do with my body. That is what I do with my mind and my spirit. All of those parts, all of those inner children, those inner teens, those younger parts of me are all one of those instruments. And I want to make sure every one of those is in tune. Everyone is playing when they need to. Everyone, quiet when you need to, because the silence in music is as important as the noise. And that's the way I think about my mind, body, and spirit. Now, with that orchestra, if I got rid of a couple of the instruments, it would not be the same. And I think that's what we're trying to do when we separate out spirituality and business. For me, I am a spirit in a human body. I have this human meat suit that I walk around in. And yes, it's a beautiful vehicle and I get to, nourish and nurture that. So hopefully I get to walk through it with it for a lot longer.
Right.
But that soul part of me, when I was denying that and I was separated from it, and then I was papering over the cracks in the facade of this fabulous life that I'd built and, trying to tell the world I had all my stuff together and that I was coping and that I was okay, and that messiness in me didn't exist. My human experience was really, really tough. Now that I recognize that access to the divine, that access to spirituality and grounded spirituality that I live on a day-to-day basis, not this spirituality where I'm trying to ascend into 5D frequencies and higher vibration and all of that. I'm not interested. I want a coherent energy field where I can anchor into the earth's vibration and I can raise up and cover more octaves, so to speak, and have the full expression of human existence, not just live in 5D frequency, but tap into all the frequencies that exist. I want this balanced, harmonic approach rather than a higher, lower kind of patriarchal model of spirituality that we sometimes are told we need to have. So I guess that's how I bring it all in, is looking at how many frequencies can I access and how can I express them in this world that we live in the best of my ability.
I love it. I love it. Now, whenever you work, do you work just with your soul and your true self, or do you bring other entities to help you?
Do you know, it is so wide and varied that every session is different. You know, sometimes, and this is what I love about kinesiology, it does the really sciencey stuff. We're looking at the human body, we're looking at, you know, liver function and biochemistry and how the different systems and organs of the body are speaking to one another. Where's the stress stored? How is it stored? We're looking at that really physical human aspect. So there's this part of me that's detective and working out what is the right question to ask to get the answer that we need to be able to move forward. Because we can ask any old questions, but the longer you do this, I think the better your questions get. Now, some of those questions are fed in. I know I am always working with my team, with the client's team, which, let's face it, we know are just energies within us anyway. It's all one and the same. So I work with I consider them my spirit team, with their spirit team, with higher consciousness, source energy, infinite wisdom, God, goddess, whatever you want to call it, that spiritual zero point, I don't know.
Right.
That high energy. And also we want to bring it into grounded reality of how do you live this out? It's not just about accessing all of that wisdom. It's how do you bring this into grounded reality and live it in your day-to-day to make meaningful change in your life. Because I think a lot of people stop on their healing journey because they start putting their feet into this sovereignty and freedom, and it can be scary because we know what we know, and it as uncomfortable as and as unsafe as it can feel, we kind of sometimes want to go back to it because it's the safety blanket or that I call it the known zone.
Right.
When we're stepping outside of that, it can all feel really, really scary and terrifying because we're stepping into these landscapes that we've got no idea what's on the other side. Sometimes I used to joke that I would just have to take the next step and hope that there was ground to catch me because I had no idea.
Right.
And so there's a lot of trust and surrender in that path. And I think when people are so programmed to want to feel like they have control over their life, that freedom can feel really scary. And I know it certainly turned a lot of people back to where they were going. But if people can really sit with somebody and work with trusted professionals to be more comfortable in that zone, then that expansion and growth is just beyond. And so I kind of bring in all of that.
Oh, I think it's great. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, and, you know, I've been working with, you know, clients who've had, you know, say children passed over, and I've had messages come through from them as well. So again, it really depends on people's belief systems as to what will be allowed to come through in a session. And so if people don't believe in past lives, for example, and I'm getting messages on past lives, I'll frame it in terms of a generational perspective. Or if people believe in past lives, then obviously we can go there. But again, I don't want to go delving into past lives or delving into the generational stuff unless it's relevant to today. And how does that knowledge that you're gaining there help you today to make that meaningful change that you're wanting to make?
And I totally agree, because anytime I do psychic medium work, I tell everybody, you know, I'm going to tell you how I'm going to work, but each session is completely different, because I am working with your spirit team. I am working with your soul. I'm working with everything that's about you. And then when stuff comes up that I've never talked about before, I'll go, okay, this is the first time I've ever talked about that. And they'll be going, oh, I feel so special. And it's like, well, yes, you're very special, but you also need to know this, this
Yeah.
is definitely for you. So I know what you mean, where the approach is almost about the same, but the result sometimes is a little bit different.
Yeah.
How you use the different, what am I trying, the different energies and the different entities and everybody involved.
Mm.
Let's go ahead and talk about your book. There's a couple of things that I really wanted to talk about. That it's called Divine Messy Human. I absolutely love that title, by the way.
Thank you.
because like you said, I think we have a lot of stuff as humans that we have to deal with on a daily basis. And with your services, you're able to get people to embrace those, whatever you have to deal with, and not really necessarily get over, but embrace and carry on, that type of thing. Now, one thing that you did talk about is emotional fluency. And I found that very interesting. Can you kind of talk about what that term means to you?
Yeah, it's interesting. It wasn't a term that I'd heard before. So when it came up, I was like, okay, that's the way we're talking about it. But I guess it is, for me, learning my emotions was becoming fluent in another language. I'd always been taught that whatever emotions I was feeling just tended to be inconvenient or wrong. I was too sensitive, or I needed thicker skin, or I couldn't take a joke, or all of the other things that I was told growing up. Now, in that, nobody ever said, I'm sorry I was an ass to you. They just blamed me for being too sensitive, blamed me for not taking a joke, blamed me for not having a sense of humor. And I took that on as there was something fundamentally wrong with me. Now, as I've learned all of these different emotions, why they're there, what they're there to tell us, their reasons for being, I've learned this language that translates into those feelings that I have, those sensations that I have in my body. So what that's given me is not necessarily a fix. It's not like I don't feel grief, or I don't feel anger, or I don't feel sadness, or I don't feel like things are really tough and hard at times.
You're right.
It also means I'm feeling wonder and awe and joy in greater proportions than I used to, because I'm not denying all these feelings. I think before I thought that my emotional band needed to be this to be socially acceptable. This is how good girls behave. This is what gets you love. Anything outside of that, you either get slapped back onto the path or you're cast out, and it's not acceptable. It's not okay. And part of my illness came from me trying to shove myself into this narrow band of emotions, where my emotional spectrum has always been the full emotional spectrum. I don't operate in black and white. I am black, white, every shade of gray, the whole Pantone chart, you name it, I've got it. And I feel them all. And yeah, I wear them on my sleeve. I get that. And that can be uncomfortable for people who aren't okay with emotions. And so that's part of the reason it was really squashed and contained, was because it made other people uncomfortable. What I've done through the personal development work is I've realized what all of those emotions were. And every time I was shamed for having an emotional response, a part of me got cut away, and it was like shoved into this abyss of my subconscious to go, you're wrong, you're bad, get out of here. And then I would choose, again, the people pleasing or the self-flagellation to get myself through. And I would make sure that everybody else was happy, that I was, quietly beating myself up and berating myself into being who they needed me to be. I felt like the two went hand in hand. But then, of course, the next time that emotion would come up again, I would split and I would split and I would split. What I've done in my healing is brought those parts from that subconscious into the fold again, understanding that they were just doing the best they could with the tools they had at the time. They might have been unresourceful, but they only had children's tools to work with. And, if these big emotions came up later in life, what would happen is they would end up exploding, as all these other parts who'd been buried in my subconscious were also going, hang on, here's an opportunity for me to maybe be heard.
Right. Yeah, instead of silenced. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's where our emotional explosions come from. So anger, because somebody hasn't done the dishes properly or whatever, isn't necessarily anger about that. It is anger from all of these times I've suppressed my anger as well as about that. So I'm not feeling seen. I'm not feeling heard. I'm not feeling like my time's being respected. All of these things come up and these little voices go, we might be able to get heard now.
Right.
The more I've healed those parts that I've split off and brought them back into the fold with love to go, I'm actually an adult now and I understand why, you haven't been resourceful in the past because you didn't know any better. But I'm leading the show now. I will keep you safe. I see you, I hear you, I feel you, and you're okay. And it's like they can take that sigh of relief and go, okay. So now when I get angry, yes, there might be some of that stuff still there, but I'm in response of it. I'm not reactive to it.
I love it. And there's a big difference there. Very big difference.
Yeah.
And another thing that you talk about, and, a lot of it, and I hope a lot of empaths are listening to this, because a lot of empaths go through the exact same thing that you just talked about, is people pleasing, thinking that we're second best. And that and the one thing that you said service to versus service. Can you kind of explain that? Because and I thought that is such a good point. Again, I've never heard that before in those terms.
It was something that I recognized, and I still see it in a lot of marketing, that we are supposed to be in service. And when we are in service, we are, doing our best work in the universe. And in theory, that sounds amazing. But I recognize that in service puts us inferior to, lesser to. We are not equal to. We also, we obviously don't want to be superior to, but when we are in service to others, it is like we are putting ourselves in servitude. We might be in service to the universe, but even then I don't agree with that terminology. It doesn't feel right in my body. And it really sort of rankled and triggered something within me that just didn't feel right. And of course, I'm big into language. I've always loved the English language and what different words mean and all of that kind of thing, the etymology of words. So when I was thinking about being in service, this is exactly where people pleasing comes from, because we put ourselves in servitude to everybody else. We put everybody else up on a pedestal. And then those people that we're putting on a pedestal, we bust our butts trying to make them happy. And that's never going to happen. If I just do this, they will love me more. If I just do this, then they will be happy. If I just do this, then fill in the blank. We are constantly working ourselves into sickness and illness to make other people happy. And that is what, to me, in service to means. When we are of service to people, we are coming from a place of equality, of, I guess, sameness. Now, to explain that, because people then go, well, we're not all equal, blah, blah, blah. Well, you know what? You could be as good a kinesiologist as me if you'd done the study I did and if you'd been working in it as long as me. And actually, some new kinesiologists are great too. And I'm not saying it's about length of service time, but I'm not going to be as good in my psychic and mediumship ability as you are, because that's what you've trained in. Doesn't mean I couldn't be if I started training. But if you think about that as a continuum, I've done some work in that area, of course, because, we're in that field.
Yes.
And we dabble. But, I'm just further behind on the path. Now, if I all of a sudden dived into study and, I don't know, worked with a mentor and did all of the extra things and started basically running along that path, who knows, maybe I could catch up. Now, is that where I want to put my energy? Not really. So, of course, if I want some help from a psychic and mediumship, I am going to go to somebody who specializes in that, who is spending their time specializing in that. It doesn't mean that we're not equal. It means that you've got a different area of expertise that I'm going to tap into, because otherwise I've got to invest my time, my energy, my money. The same way that, I outsource my accounting for my business. Could I do it myself? I guess I could. Do I want to do it myself? No, I really do not. So I'm going to outsource that. Now, because that's their area of genius. and so on and so forth. But what it is just, if you think about everybody within this globe, some will be higher,
Correct.
would all just be in a different spot. So it's not about higher than, lower than. It's not about better than, worse than. We all have something to teach each other. And sometimes we're on that cycle of the wheel going up, and sometimes we're on the cycle of the wheel going down. And so I tend to think of that more as that global model where we can be pretty much anywhere within that sphere, and other people will be in different places in that sphere. And if we help each other out, we're all going to be better off.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's the of service to model, where we are equal. We are not putting ourselves inferior, superior. We are recognizing that we all just have different expressions of that collective conscience that we bring into the world. And if we tap into the right ones, then everybody benefits.
Right. Well, I got to share with you. That's why I had to bring it up. Is I was at a holistic fair this weekend doing readings, and in between clients, I was actually had my Kindle and I was reading your book and everything. There was a lady that sat down, and she was needing to hear the message or the differences of service in versus service of. And I said, I can't believe it. I just read this. And so that really helped her. I mean, she said, oh my gosh, that, you could see the little light coming on, because she was just really hurting herself by doing the service, the service to instead of the service of. I mean, she was really running her energy really, really low when she could give that responsibility, like you said, to help each other out and to be equal. So I just wanted to let you know that your book helps somebody, one of my clients.
How often does that happen for us in the energy working field, where I'll listen to something in the morning and then in the afternoon I'll have a client come in and it will be the perfect message for them. And you're like, whoa.
Yes.
Or, or something comes up in a client session, you're like, shit, I needed to hear that.
Absolutely. And it's almost like, and I trust it, but I don't know why it surprises me every time. It just like,
Can I say why I think it is?
Absolutely.
Because I say that all the time. I open a book for the message. Say, for example, an essential oil tests up or a remedy tests up, and the first words that catch my eye is exactly what we've been talking about. And it's just this hammering home of this message. And I'll go, oh my God, you can't write this. Like, you just can't make this shit up. Like, seriously, it's so accurate and on the ball. And I think why we find it amazing is that part of us that can tap into the magic and the curiosity and the wonder and the awe. And it's like the child finding fairy tales and magic and mystery. That's what we're tapping into.
Oh,
it's that innocence. It's that bit of, it's another proof point of going, this works. This may only be anecdotal evidence, but this works. And scientists are not going to spend $20 million doing a randomized study to see that this works.
No.
But every little piece of that anecdotal evidence creates our own scientific study to go, energy and vibration are the keys to the universe. And the more we can understand this, oh my God, this is just going to change the world.
Oh,
and I think that's the part of us that gets lit up every time that happens.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, talking about, being a child at heart, are you ready for that last question?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Let me bring it on. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and spin it. Hopefully it will spin. Sometimes there's a lag in it because of the internet. So let's see what your question will be. I need to start putting prizes in it or something as well.
I love it.
Oh. All right.
I love it.
So if you had to choose a superpower, what would it be?
Do you know, I think our superpowers are the ones that we actually develop on that human level. I'm developing all of my psychic senses.
Mhm.
I am developing the claircognizance, clairaudience, clairvoyance, clairsentience, clairgustance, clairsalience. I am developing those superpowers. I am working on it every day. And I've recognized that my biggest superpower is empathy, but it came because of my heightened trauma response. If I could watch for those behaviors that were abusive and catch them and make people happy before they got to that, maybe I could stop myself being abused. So my empathy came from a trauma response. And at the time, I thought that like that was just a personality trait, me people pleasing and everything. But as I've done the work, I'm going, that's where my empathy came from. Now, my empathy is one of my biggest superpowers. But I'm using that empathy now in a way where, yes, it was informed by trauma. Great, I can own that. But now, how do I develop that as an adult, not as my child self or teenage self, into a way that I can be of service to others with it?
Mm-hmm.
And so the superpowers of all of those clairsenses are the way that I'm using that trauma to become a superpower to make the world that better place.
And I think you're already using that superpower. And I just want to thank you, for using your superpower. And really, because to me, you're having to show others what you have gone through, the trauma that you've gone through. You're showing it. And it's very vulnerable, whenever you show everybody your true self. So, Amanda, I really want to thank you for doing that because you are making the world a better place and changing this energy. I think it's awesome. So where can people find you? I'll put it in the show notes, but just so that they can hear it, where can they find you?
Well, I'm on all the socials, but the links to all of them are at amandakate.com.au, which is exactly the way it sounds, Amanda, Kate with a K.com.au. So the .au is for Australia, but all of my social links are, I think, in the top header, so it'll be easy.
Oh, absolutely. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise. And like I said, I could talk to you all week about this.
Oh, we absolutely could. And thank you, Michelle, for the work you're bringing into the world because it is so needed and we're so appreciative. Absolutely love
well,
it. So
thank you, Amanda. Oh, well, thank you. And I want to thank everybody for listening and tuning in. And again, I hope that every episode brings you not only inspiration, but also some knowledge, because I think that is so important because I think the more knowledge that you have, the more in tuned you can be in and show your authentic self. Okay, guys, I will see you soon.